Morning, everyone. Happy Mother's Day to all mothers or anyone else who would like to claim it. My name is Judy Marazan. I'll be your worship associate this morning. And I do want to welcome everyone, whether you're here watching online or you're here for the first time or you've been here 1,000 times. All of us, our beloved community, we are all stronger because we are here together. We are one people with many viewpoints, many origins, colors, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing and learning together. We are guided by passion, love, and commitment. Just as you are, we welcome you. And now the announcements. Okay, so if this is your first time here, we welcome you. And please stop by the Welcome Center if you haven't already. It's in the hallway leading out to the parking lot. Also, please join us for a coffee hour after service. We have registration that's open for several wonderful programs coming up. We have the All Ages Game Night that's going to be on Friday, May 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. Then there's a family visit to the Lake Erie Nature and Science Center in Bay Village. And that's going to be on Sunday, May 15th at 12:30. And that program is going to be led by my wife, Susan Ballard. She's a member. And then the next program would be the Serenity Circle, led by Reverend Shirley Nelson. That's on May 18th, Tuesday, from 6 to 8 p.m. And then Thursdays at West Shore, Thursday, May 19th, celebrating the spirituality of gardening. That'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. Now, all of you can sign up out in the rotunda afterwards. There's a sign-up sheet, or you can follow the links that are in the Friday e-news, or simply call the office, but you can get yourself registered, so hope you join us for those. Okay. Saturday, May 14th, an important day. Let's all turn out for Planned Parenthood's Cleveland Day of Action. Ban off our bodies. It'll be at Willard Park at East 19th and Lakeside. East 9th and Lakeside from 11 to 1. And as you may have heard, possibilities of Roe v. Wade being overturned, this is going to be very important for us all to show up. And then lastly, the Board of Trustees invites you to attend the annual meeting on Sunday, May 22nd in the sanctuary shortly after the morning service, so about 11:45 to 12:45. Information on attending virtually will be emailed and mailed to you soon. We need 150 members for a quorum, so please plan to attend. Thank you. Okay, so now for the chalice lighting. I'm going to do a reading that I adapted from one that was presented at Oak Bank UU Church in Oak Bank, Manitoba, Canada. This Mother's Day, I light the chalice for those with good or strained relationships with their mothers. For mothers with good or strained relationships with their children. For those who have lost mothers or mothers who have lost children. For those who have never been mothers, those who have chosen not to be mothers, and those who missed their chance to be mothers. So for all mothers, may you feel loved, honored, and supported in whatever form of mother or child you are, biological, foster, adoptive, or spiritual. May you feel the freedom to celebrate or not celebrate this day as you see fit. May you feel respected in your choices and never be treated less than. And may your legacy live on in all the children whose lives you touch.
Let us now witness to the unity of our spirit by saying together our unison affirmation words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio su ley. Este es nuestro magnífico convenio, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Legacies of oppression. Healing is our way forward. Joy is the birthright of all.
Well, good morning, West Shore. How the heck are ya? It is... What? It is time to greet each other as feels mutually comfortable. Be sure to wave at the folks at home. They're waving back at you. Let's greet each other right now in a spirit of love.
Okay. We're going to lead ourselves. We're going to lead ourselves into hymn number 116. I'm on my way. And y'all, I'm going to be doing something a little different today. I'm going to be leading the song. But in addition to leading the song, I'm going to be leading the clapping. So if you are feeling moved to clap, don't quite know where the clap lands, that's all right, just follow me. And if your body is feeling moved to move, and by all means, move your body, that includes dancing. We're allowed to dance here, all right? So, we all know this one, here it goes. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I told my sister, come go with me. I told my sister, come go with me. I asked my sister, with me. I asked my brother, come and go with me. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. If they say no, I'll go anyhow. If they say no, I'll go anyhow. If they say no, I'll go anyhow. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way.
Well, now I'm out of breath. Phew. I graduated from Kent State University, and go Flashes. And soon after that, I began working for the YWCA in Warren, Ohio. And then in 1972, we moved up to the Cleveland area, and I worked as a teenage program director at the YMCA in Euclid. Now, one of my favorite teens was a young woman named Cindy. She was very intelligent, very pretty. She had the classic red hair, blue eyes, and freckles. Just a wonderful young woman. She was also very Christian, conservative, and very naive. Now, at that time, I was very Catholic, somewhat conservative, and maybe just a little less naive than Cindy was. So when Roe v. Wade passed in 1973, Cindy was appalled. She was very anti-abortion. And she started volunteering for the organization called Birthright. Now, Cindy, shortly after that, she convinced me to come with her to go to a preterm center. And we were going undercover. She was going to bring a vial of urine that was already positive for pregnancy. And she got this from Birthright. And I was going with a tape recorder so that I could record those words from the women there who convince women to have abortions. So when we got there, we eventually met a counselor who was very friendly, actually, and I fumbled discreetly to turn on the recorder while she told Cindy that she was pregnant. So during the discussion that followed, the counselor presented Cindy with pretty good information about caring for herself and her baby. And at no time was the A word, abortion, ever presented. So afterwards, we talked a little, but Cindy just wasn't quite convinced that these people were okay. So fast forward to Cindy's senior year in high school. She's 18. She has never dated, but she wants to go to the prom with one of the most handsome young men in her school. So she gets up the courage to go and ask him to the prom, and he accepts. I was amazed. So they go to the prom, they have lots of fun, and afterwards have sex in the back of his car. When I see Cindy a week later, she is really ashamed of herself for giving in so easily and disappointed that this experience was so mechanical and unromantic, and certainly not what she hoped the first time would be like. Well, of course, Ron doesn't call her to go out again, and in a few months, Cindy learns she's pregnant. Oh my. To really top things off, Ron denies being the baby's father, and even his parents refuse to provide any support. Well, by now Cindy is quite depressed, and so am I, and her pregnancy is not going well. She learns that she is going to have twins, and in her last month, she has to stay in bed because of some issues she's having. Well, as soon as she delivers the babies, Cindy had a mental breakdown, and she had to spend the next 6 months in a facility getting some good counseling. Her mom, who was wonderful, had to take a leave of absence of work to care for the babies, 2 beautiful girls, until Cindy could come home and do that herself. So, is this the story that's painful to learn and remember that I learned, where some women really do need to have an abortion, or should, for their own well-being and for those around them? Well, not quite. After Cindy came home, we kind of lost touch with each other. I was involved in other things, and anyway, I was driving down her street one day and I saw her out for a walk. So I stopped and I invited her into the car and we chatted a little. And eventually she shared with me that she loved her girls, but she became very lonely and wanted the company of a man. She wanted that companionship and intimacy. Well, it took her much courage, of course, to begin dating again, and she did meet a man, and they actually developed a very warm and loving relationship. Unfortunately, Cindy became pregnant again. She knew there was no way she could go through with another pregnancy. The thought actually terrified her. So she did have an abortion. That was truly the aha moment for me, when I actually felt that terror that Cindy had. And in my heart, I knew that if she tried to go through with that pregnancy, she just might not make it.
Let us now enter into our meditation for all that is our lives. All are welcome to come forward, to share from the heart, to express a hope, a prayer, an intention by placing a stone or through writing on a card. Know that what you write down on a card will be held in confidence, and if you request a follow-up, I or a member of our pastoral care team will contact you. and sorrows of our heart, which I will take into my meditations this week and pray for all that is our lives.
For all that is our lives, we bring our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
For today's call to the offering, I want to say a few words about the new look of your paper order of service. If you have been around for a while, you probably spotted the changes instantly. And I want to say a little bit about the changes. Why the changes? For me, I saw an opportunity for us to live more deeply into our mission to be a vital spiritual community that inspires more love and justice in our lives and in the larger world. The changes to the order of service are in pursuit of that. So this was the basic question I took to our community of worship associates. I also took it to the coordinating team, which is composed of both staff and congregants. What might our order of service look like so that when worship is over, people feel interested in taking it home with them because it can serve them like during the week as a part of their spiritual process? How might it more explicitly reveal who we are as a people of Unitarian Universalist faith? If the order of service was given to someone who has never heard of Unitarian Universalism before, who has never been to a service here at this church, could they get something meaningful and rich out of it? So I took all these questions to our community of worship associates and our coordinating team, and together with our staff, this is what we came up with. And I want to walk through it just very briefly with you. You see the first page here at the bottom is our mission vision statement. We want people to know immediately what we are, why we exist. You open it up, you see the welcome page right here. So user's manual for what to do when you worship, when you show up for Sunday morning. In the middle, you've got the classic order of service elements there with the blue background. And then you'll see right beside it the sermon page. And what you've got here is, of course, the blurb for the sermon. You've got a quote from the sermon. You've got dedicated space for making notes. This is meant to be something that supports people's processing, thinking through of the sermon message for the day. If you flip the page, you will see the deeper dive page. The deeper dive page. Now, these are resources you can tap into to go deeper. And I want you to note that we are from now on sending the paper order of service every week on Fridays in your weekly e-news. So you can click on that. In fact, if you want to explore any of these resources, that's where you want to go. Go to your weekly e-news that comes out Friday, and the links are right there. They'll take you straight to these articles, which I have selected because I think they were certainly helpful for me as a part of my sermon research, and I think they'll be helpful to anyone who wants to go deeper into this topic. You'll also notice at the bottom here, you see the theme of the month for Soul Matters. What you'll get there every month is a dedicated spiritual practice that you can try on your own at home. And it also gives you a heads up on what the particular theme happens to be that all of our connection circles are exploring in this particular month. Connection circles are a great way to build friends, to deepen friendships, and to bring in more spiritual focus into your life. Finally, flip to the back. You'll see a listing of our 7 principles, our 6 sources, and you even get a little bit of UU history. And the idea behind this page is to give folks a taste of our Unitarian Universalist faith. So hopefully this is a usable resource for you to take home with you. Give it to somebody you may not know who may be interested in West Shore. Of course, it is up to you, but the opportunity is there, and we're excited to be able to provide it in this way. It's been the creation of many hands, many people. As I said, I hope it will serve you well in your spiritual journey. I do want to acknowledge it is change. And change can be a little bit bumpy, and I just want to invite us to live into this, see where it takes. We, of course, welcome your feedback. Please speak to any worship associate if you've got some feedback to share. Let me know. But we're excited to be able to offer this and to be able to be more explicit about who we are as a people of faith through our paper order of service. I just want to say, when you gift this community with your time, your energy, your money, you make it possible for us to be even more strongly spiritual focused so that we can gather together, rally together to make a difference in our larger world. And the world desperately needs our vision and our action and our dedication. So thank you. Thank you for all that you give to this place. Thank you. The morning's offering will now be given and gratefully received. Well, this is not the sermon I plan to preach on this Sunday. This is a sermon I hope that I would never have to preach. But here we are. Yet another shell-shocking moment in our time of explosions. The COVID-19 pandemic, the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and more. And now this past Monday, when a draft of the Supreme Court's majority decision regarding Roe versus Wade was leaked to the news, which in itself, draft documents being leaked, unheard of in modern times. As for what this draft says, 5 members of the court, all installed by conservative presidents, Justices Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, all of these they have decided to overturn Roe versus Wade, which almost 50 years ago established access to abortion as a constitutional right which the individual states may not infringe upon. The decision is to erase this altogether. The world, as it has been for almost 50 years, gone in an instant. And I want you to note that this is male and female justices deciding this together, which defies the impression that here we have yet another typical sexist situation of men making decisions about women's bodies. That is not what is happening here. It is patriarchal men and patriarchal women together making this decision about women's bodies, to the great dismay of other non-patriarchal men and women who strongly disagree. But what is this decision more precisely? Justice Samuel Alito is the author of the majority decision, and his opinion takes on an aggressive, aggrieved tone. The right to abortion, he says, is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions. He says the Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision. He says Roe versus Wade, it's been a highly restrictive regime on the entire nation. Do you get that? Regime? Regime? Are you listening? Regime, what does that suggest? Note that even Justice Alito, but especially Justices Barrett, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Thomas, during their nomination hearings, they assured the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee that they considered Roe versus Wade and the 1992 Planned Parenthood versus Casey decision upholding Roe as settled law. And they had no agenda to challenge them. Something stinks. This is Mother's Day, and I believe that mothers ought to be able to choose to be mothers. Do you agree with me? Yes. It should be emphasized that the leaked majority decision is a draft. Aspects of it might change. Its aggressive, aggrieved tone, it might be softened. Who knows what the end result might be, but it has nevertheless landed like a bomb in our midst, like a bomb landing amidst what ought to be the peace of Mother's Day, making mothering a thing that some women will be forced into against their will. Molly Young-Fast, writing in The Atlantic, has words to say about this. She says, 49 years after the greatest feminist victory of the 20th century, we hear Samuel Alito say that, quote, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. It's worth pointing out here, Mullah Youngfast continues, that in 1973, 5 years before I was born, when women had far fewer rights, when they couldn't even get a credit card without the permission of their husband or their parents, Roe was decided 7-2 with 5 Republican-appointed justices in support. The world, she says, has become more profoundly pro-choice than it was in 1973. Even Catholic countries like Ireland have legalized abortion. Yet here in America, the clock is spinning backwards with stunning and terrifying speed. The clock is indeed spinning backwards. It is stunning. Is it not terrifying? That is why we gather. We Unitarian Universalists rally ourselves to our best sense of what justice calls us to in this time. And we think together, we act together. If the pandemic, with its enforced social distancing, made you forget why this church exists, maybe the decision coming down from the Supreme Court will help you remember. We gather together to breathe. We gather together to get clear. We gather together to resist, to reform, to renew, to do all of these things with resilience. All times when we are lonely are tough times, but to be lonely now, to be carrying this burden now alone, this is the worst. Today, on Mother's Day, because we believe mothering ought to be something women can freely choose, we are talking about what the heck just happened, and also what is wrong with it, and what is positively fishy at the bottom of it, and then what to do about it. We have already seen one thing that is very wrong with the majority decision of the court. The justices who voted for it essentially lied. During their confirmation hearings, they lied. And there is so much more that is wrong with this thing. Conservative writer for the New York Times, Bret Stephens, says that this decision is not conservative, but radical. What is conservative? He asks. It is, above all, he says, the conviction that abrupt and profound changes to established law and common expectations are utterly destructive to respect for law and to the institutions that are meant to uphold the law, especially when those changes are instigated from above with neither democratic consent nor broad consensus. And I would add to this, do you know that 19% of our nation wants to uphold Roe versus Wade to allow no reasons for abortion at all? 19% of our nation wants that. What this means is the court is trying to reshape America to serve only 19% of its people, to the detriment of the other 81%. It stinks of politics. Which leads to another aspect of wrongness with this decision. Justice Sonia Sotomayor says it like this. She says, will this institution survive the stench that this creates in the public perception that the Constitution and its reading are just political acts? If people, she goes on to say, actually believe that it is all political, how will we survive? How will the court survive? Now, in the face of all the uproar, all the fallout, a non-scalable fence, you hear about this? A non-scalable fence is being erected around the Supreme Court building. Did you know this? Walling it off from protesters. And this is the same kind of defense that the court itself denied to clinics providing abortion services. Back in 2014, they denied the same sort of thing to clinics back in 2014. Clinics needing protection from violent activists. It is just disgusting. And it goes on beyond the wrongness of being radical and beyond the wrongness of undermining the legitimacy of the court is the wrongness of the path the majority opinion against Roe opens up to nullifying other civil rights. The majority decision says quite plainly that rights that are only implied and not explicitly laid out in the Constitution are invalid. Did you know that that is what the reasoning is? So it is not far-fetched to worry about what happens next to the right to same-sex marriage, the right to contraception, the right to be free from discrimination based on race or gender, and on and on. Now, to be fair, Justice Alito did preemptively reject that argument. This is what he said. He said, to ensure that our decision is not misunderstood or mischaracterized, we emphasize that our decision concerns the constitutional right to abortion and no other right. Nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. That is what Justice Alito said. And you know what I want to say? I want to say, I don't trust you anymore. I don't trust you anymore. All five of those justices said that they would not target Roe versus Wade. But guess what? Here we are. It stinks. So much feels wrong about this. Obvious wrongness has to do with how this decision dehumanizes and degrades women, how it takes away from women the most basic right of bodily autonomy. As the powerful Ruth Bader Ginsburg once said, the decision whether or not to bear a child is central to a woman's life, to her well-being, to her dignity. It is a decision she must make for herself. When government controls that decision for her, she is being treated as less than a fully human being who is responsible for her own choices. And then, yes. And then there is the obvious wrongness of the sheer hypocrisy of the pro-life movement. By no means is it pro-life when you want to save all embryos which are only potential human beings, but side by side with this, you argue for absolutely no restrictions on guns, which would be about saving actual lives. As one meme, yes. As one meme on Facebook put it, pro-life would be 20 Sandy Hook students starting high school. You got it? By no means is it pro-life when you also argue that government has no business ensuring paid parental leave, universal child health care, universal mental health care, universal child care, and so on. Do you know that we are ranked at the bottom 5% of Western democracies in health care for women and children and babies? Did you know that? I mean, how much worse can it get? Shame. And then what does pro-life mean anyway? When a woman has been, for example, sexually assaulted and impregnated, and she is forced to go through that pregnancy and give birth to a baby who will ensure that she never forgets that terrible trauma. Or when a woman hemorrhages due to a placental abruption, causing her parents, her spouse, her children to have to make the impossible decision on whether to save her or her unborn child. Or when a woman who has been working 2 jobs just to make ends meet and has got to choose between bringing another child into poverty or feeding the children she already has because her spouse walked out on her. Tell me, what is pro-life about any of that? As Methodist pastor Dave Barnhart from Birmingham, Alabama, this is what he says it so well. He says, the unborn are a convenient group to advocate for. They never make demands on you. They are morally uncomplicated, unlike the incarcerated or the addicted or the chronically poor. They don't resent your condescension or complain that you are not politically correct. Unlike widows, they don't ask you to question patriarchy. Unlike orphans, they don't need money or education or child care. Unlike aliens, they don't bring all that racial, cultural, and religious baggage that you dislike. They allow you to feel good about yourself without any work at creating or maintaining relationships. And when they're born, you can forget about them because they cease to be unborn. It's almost as if by being born, they have died to you. You can love the unborn. You can advocate for the unborn without substantially challenging your own wealth, power, or privilege, without reimagining social structures, apologizing, or making reparations to anyone. They are, in short, the perfect people to love. If you want to claim that you love Jesus but actually dislike people who breathe, prisoners, immigrants, the sick, the poor, widows, orphans, all the groups that are specifically mentioned in the Bible, well, they all get thrown under the bus for the unborn. That's that Methodist pastor from Birmingham, Alabama. I want us to take an even closer look now at the unborn as the focus of the radical right, because here we will find something not just wrong, we will find something fishy. And what I mean by that is pernicious, shameful, disgusting. And what I am about to say is by no means an indictment of all or perhaps many pro-life folks, because you can be pro-life but completely unaware of the history of that movement and what it is based on. You can't, before I go any further, do you see what I'm talking about? You can be ardently pro-life and not understand what is deeply going on. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. So, first of all, acknowledge up front, for some people, pro-life is a considered moral decision. You are looking at a past philosophy professor. I know the arguments. There are good arguments on both sides. So let me just be sure that I'm putting that out there. But, as Jefferson Cowie, a historian at Vanderbilt University, says, there are two other decidedly less noble dimensions to the anti-abortion position. One is what we saw in spades with Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, the politicization of the issue to rile up the electorate. Says Jefferson Cowie, this is less about policy and it is more about pure and simple voter harvesting. Got it? Voter harvesting. Obviously, there is very little support for neonatal care or curbing the death penalty. So pro-life, he says, is a ridiculous misnomer. They are less pro-life than they are pro-political power their own. All right? Got that? All right? And then there is this dimension. I give you Jefferson Cowie again. And the naming of this dimension, he names it as state and regional sovereignty. Regional politics, he says, is still defined by a resistance to federal authority. If the federal government can run any aspect of regional culture or politics, the logic goes, then they can run it all. This has been a concern pretty much about everything since Reconstruction, including lynch law, fair employment practices, the Brown decision, desegregation of public schools, busing, prayer in schools, and abortion. This issue runs deep. He says, consider the career of George Wallace, who liked to say the federal government has put the courts in schools and taken God out. This is the remnants of the lost cause still blowing in the political winds. Now, do you get that? The remnants of the lost cause still blowing in the political winds? If you are a fan of another historian by the name of Heather Cox Richardson, you know what I am just about to say. Really, what is at bottom is a Confederate states' rights argument that wants to preserve white supremacy. I am not kidding. I am not kidding. And the only way to do that is to shrink the power of the federal government, elevate the rule of the states, and also to jury-rig the election process so that the radical right stays in power even if it is completely out of line with what the vast majority of Americans want. What do you think about that? The stink of the Confederates' lost cause at the bottom of the pro-life movement. Now, this is no joke. Come to the sermon chat. I've got more I can share on this in case you don't see the connection. It's real, okay? I mean, there's got to be something fishy at the bottom of all of this when, in 1973, the Southern Baptist Convention approved the following resolution on abortion. Listen. Be it further resolved that we call upon Southern Baptists to work for legislation that will allow the possibility of abortion under such conditions as rape, incest, clear evidence of severe fetal deformity, and carefully ascertained evidence of the likelihood of damage to the emotional, mental, and physical health of the mother. Unquote. Sounds very Unitarian Universalist, right? In our denomination, at the same time, we were issuing the same kinds of declarations. But now listen at how radically things have changed. Just last year, the Southern Baptist Convention moved to, again I quote, affirm that the murder of preborn children is a crime against humanity that must be punished equally under the law. And then they said, we humbly confess and lament any complicity in recognizing exceptions that legitimize or regulate abortion and of any apathy in not laboring with the power and influence we have to abolish abortion. That is what I call a whiplash change. That is fishy. Something about it stinks. And you know what? Therefore we gather. We Unitarian Universalists rally ourselves to our best sense of love and justice, and we think together, we act together. I would even want to say this more strongly, that our mission here at West Shore is to rally people of liberal faith to the miracle of love in action, for the sake of healing and justice in our lives and in the larger world. Because when things feel really stuck, when they feel scary like they do right now, positive change does feel like what? A miracle. So what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? My answer is short. It's going to take a little bit to explain it. Here is my answer. To act from a spiritual place. Start with the spiritual place part first. As I see it, it is about dwelling within a larger perspective. This is about imagining what is happening in a way that avoids demonizing the 5 justices on the Supreme Court and the 19% of Americans and more who are cheering them on. Okay? Start with universalism. Universalism historically says that all people seek happiness as best as they understand it in the moment of their seeking. Even the worst people imaginable. What is at the heart Whoever we're talking about, what is at the heart is always good, but what is bad is how people can understand what is going on, which is not corrected by simply spouting a list of facts at them or having them read a book. Everyone's understanding of what is good is rooted in group loyalty, survival strategies, unconscious agendas that need to be brought to light. This is why we must love each other as hard as we know how and be patient. Growing wiser is a journey for us all. This doesn't mean that we don't fight for love and justice as best as we know. We fight, but we fight with honor. We fight and yet not lose sight of our responsibility to treat even our worst ideological enemies with kindness and mercy. We fight knowing that the picture we have may very well be partial, and we ourselves have a thing or two more to learn. And then there is this. We fight with a sense of humility. I have spoken about this before, of the interdependent, what I call the interdependent web of moral learning. How each of us achieves perhaps our greatest learning about the difference between right and wrong by doing things that hurt others, by screwing up and hurting others. And we experience the consequences of that. We learn the hard way because of that. You know, this happens to be a time in America when many children of God are learning about authoritarianism and about racial hatred. And their mistakes are going to harm us all. Do you get that? They're going to harm us all. Yet they must go through that. How else are they going to learn? And since we are part of an interdependent web of all being, we are going to suffer with them. But you know what? We got to soften the resentment and in our hearts. We got to melt our hearts into compassion. The reason why we must do that is the fact that guess who also learns the hard way by hurting other people? Guess who else learns that way? You and me. You and me. No one is exempt from this interdependency. The hurt that we cause others, from which we can and will learn so much. It is the gift of others to us. It is the gift of others to us. So let our present suffering be a gift to those who are bringing harm to us. We are all children of God learning, and we hurt each other. The best we can do is give our hurting as a gift, our willingness to... When I try to see our situation from a God's eye perspective, as best as I can fathom that, this is the picture that comes for me, the interdependent web of moral learning. I commend this vision to you as you seek to act from a spiritual place in this time. We are a church. This is what defines us, what we act from, a spiritual vision. As for specific actions that I would recommend that we take as a congregation, here they are. Number one, organize a new justice task force that focuses explicitly on reproductive rights. Clear and dedicated leadership is imperative in this time. Ohio is one of 25 states likely to ban abortion if allowed to. Did you know that? We're on that list. So the way forward is to organize, create a dedicated task force. According to the process laid out in 2012, this would require 4 members of West Shore committed to this work who are not already leaders in other task forces. They would need to provide a mission statement and an action plan to me and to Gloria Beamer because we are the co-leads of the Justice and Outreach Council. We would be delighted to help a group like this get off the ground. That's number one. Number two, I recommend that one of the first things this new task force does is leverage the public witness power of this building and hang a sign out front, right beside our Black Lives Matter sign, a sign that says, "This church supports abortion rights." As I hope my sermon, because first of all, despairing people in the world need to know what this church stands for. They need to see that public witness. But as my sermon has already suggested, to hang these signs side by side is entirely appropriate, given that the fishy underbelly of the pro-choice movement has racist foundations. Pro-life movement, yeah. The process now for moving on this, for putting up a sign in the front, it is clear. The new task force on reproductive rights would create and circulate a petition for hanging such a sign. If at least 10% of West Shore's membership signs on, then it goes to our board. The board can either recommend that we enter into a lengthy process of a congregation-wide exploration of this issue, as we are doing with the 8th principle currently, or the board can judge that this situation requires immediate attention and they can legitimately make the decision themselves to say, yes, we're going to hang this sign. The way forward is clear. Number 1, number 2, here's number 3. I furthermore recommend that this new task force guides this congregation as we get closer and closer to our November elections. We want to be sure that we inform folks about who the pro-choice candidates are and to empower people to vote. This, and there are other things that this congregation can do to make a difference. The task force can help guide the way. And then number 4, finally, something else that each of us can do, and that is make your annual pledge to this congregation. Again, I know that the enforced isolation of the pandemic has led all of us to reevaluate our priorities and moving forward to demand that what we give our time and money to matters. Well, what this congregation does in any and all times matters, but especially in a time like this. Our mission is to rally people to love and justice in our lives and the larger world. When things feel stuck and hopeless, we are needing a miracle, and we can be a part of that. Do not underestimate how much your financial support makes this possible. If you have not yet pledged, pledge, and pledge generously. If you have already pledged, pledge perhaps a little more than you did. Maybe you will consider increasing it. We're going to be in this fight for a long haul. Does that make sense to say? It's going to be a long haul. So we need to think long haul. We need to act long haul. This religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen. Together our vision widens. Together our strength is renewed. The times need it. These are extraordinary times. You and I and us all, we got to step up. Are you with me? Yes. Let's sing our closing hymn. Please rise as you are willing and able. Wo-ya-ya, number 1020.
We know
chalice, we extinguish the chalice. We say together, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we meet again.
Please join us for coffee hour in Baker Hall, and then at noon we will have our sermon chat in the chapel, and I hope there's so much of us we'll have to come back in here. But the sermon chat will start in the chapel. I want to offer up as our benediction words, words from the great Unitarian Edward Everett Hale. He says, together, one of the most inspiring words in the English language. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. Look up, he says, not down. Look forward and not back. Look out and not in. Lend a hand. That is what he says. Ashe, amen. Go in peace.